Alright, so a few weeks ago I wrote an article in The Guardian where I essentially outed myself as someone who in the past has struggled with the whole meaning of it all. Never really got to grips with what life was all about, and as a result suffered from anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues, self-loathing, and didn't really understand what it was all for. I really thought that life was something that happened to me, and that I didn't really have any say in what was going on. I felt powerless to be able to do anything, and no matter how hard I tried to influence the outside world, nothing much happened. Now, I thought this article would just get buried somewhere and no one would read it, but it turned out they printed it quite large. There it is in G2, which is the kind of arts and culture and lifestyle section of the Guardian, and it turned out everybody in the world saw it, which was great for my anxiety, because I'm not someone who likes to be centre of attention, despite what you may think with me posting all these videos all the time. But in the article I also talked about some of the techniques that I used to basically get my shit together and get out of the rut that I was stuck in. Because after I realised that trying to control the outside world wasn't working, someone kind of suggested, why don't I try and control or change my perspective, the inner world? And so I adopted a variety of things to deal with this. I started journaling, I started just trying different practices. I tried affirmations, they didn't really do an awful lot for me. Journaling was a huge one, a practice of gratitude that I did every day. And then also meditation, because in your head there is this, or certainly in my head, there is this constant chatter, and it just goes on and on and on, and you can't really define who you are in relation to this, because you think that the chatter that's in your head is you. You think that this voice that's constantly going on in here telling you why bother, you'll only fail, you're useless, you'll never succeed, you'll never get anywhere with this constant voice saying, reminding you constantly of all the negative things that have happened in the past, undermining your attempts to change anything in the future, kind of telling you not to bother, is a waste of time. All this chatter, this undermining chatter, it doesn't serve any purpose. And by meditating, you get to calm it down. You turn the volume down on that, and you can realise that all this talk that's going on in your head is not you. It's a part of you, just like your hand is. But if your hand was to start, as I wrote in my first book, if your hand was to start slapping you uncontrollably, you'd be a bit surprised. Yet that's what our constant stream of negative thought is doing. It's like your own hand slapping you. Our brain is part of us, our mind is part of us, but it's not us. It's a tool that we need to use. And with meditation, I found a way to understand that, because in meditation, you're taking your attention away from this thing up here that is shouting, look at me, all the time. Just look at me, listen to what I'm saying to you. And you're taking your attention away from that, and you're focusing it on something else. And in meditation, generally, that anchor is breathing. And it's a really powerful thing, because once you realise you can turn the volume down on that, you can interrupt it for a minute and just have a little tea break, then you start to realise that you don't have to be constantly listening to this voice in your head all the time. And that was huge for me. And it's also a practice like going to the gym. And the problem with stuff like this is it's borderline spirituality, right? Suddenly when you're focusing on breathing and things like this, things start to grab your attention. So you start to pay attention to just the beauty of the world around you, and you start to understand your connection to the universe. You start to kind of engage with the idea of those questions, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And that can seem a little bit, I hate the phrase woo-woo, but that can seem a little bit woo-woo to people. And so I've always kind of been a little bit subdued. Even after I wrote my first book and my second book, I write my blog on a regular basis, but I don't necessarily share these thoughts out in public. I always kind of separate myself from them. And then I wrote that article, and I thought, no one will see this. No one reads my blog, no one reads my books, no one really listens to any of this stuff. And if they do, they think I'm some kind of new age hippie, and I'm into sound baths and spiritual healing, which actually are pretty cool once you get into them. But, there are certain stigmas attached to that. You're never going to go somewhere in the real world if you're wasting your time real like woo-woo nonsense. So I wrote the article. Turns out every man and his dog in the world saw it, and that was actually a little bit frightening for me, because I felt like I felt exposed and vulnerable about it. But then people started reaching out to me. So the article doesn't have my email address or any of my details on there. It doesn't talk about my books or my meditation workshops or anything like that. But people tracked me down, and a lot of people came to me. I must have had like 20 people come to me. Some people say thank you. Some people just said this resonated with me. Some people said, how can I find out more about meditation, because this is what I'm going through right now. And the thing is, it's like you have these kind of closed off sections of your life that you think, I want to keep this quiet because it's deeply personal and I feel like a failure, and that's why I've turned to meditation. That's why people turn to therapy, but they don't necessarily talk about it, but we're all going through it. The system that we live in, this Western economic system where we get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, we come home at 5 o'clock at night, Monday to Friday, if you're lucky enough to have a job that isn't shift work, for example. This whole system, it's not a natural thing. It's completely unnatural. This regime that we put ourselves through is not a natural thing. It's man-made. It's completely made up. And so we're trying to kind of put a square peg into a round hole. We're not cogs in a system. We're living beings. We're human beings. We're odd shapes and sizes. We're all kind of different personality traits. And we're trying to pigeonhole ourselves into our job descriptions and our working hours and our public transport and this whole routine that exists not just for us. Okay, it pays our salaries, but for very few of us is it actually giving us any more. This is not living. This is making a wage. This is paying the rent. This is doing the kind of mundane day-to-day stuff that you have to do in order to get by in the system. But the problem is, as I've kind of said a few times, it's better to be a person with a system than it is to be a person in the system. And being in the system, going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home, it's not natural. And so, we struggle with it. We have anxiety, we have low self-esteem, we have these kind of problems with confidence and with depression and things like this, and we hide them away. But the next person's going through the same thing. The next person's going through the same thing. Everywhere you go, you've got people who are trying to fit themselves as square pegs into round holes, and it's stressful. It's stressful on the natural part of us. So we have to make these kind of practices, whether it's meditation, whether it's therapy, whether it's just talking about it, or whether it's just reaching out for help to someone else. We have to make it part of our practice, just like eating healthily, just like going to the gym, like going to the doctor or the dentist. We've got to look after ourselves, and that means developing a practice, a spiritual practice, because we're not just, adding machines, calculating machines who go to work tapping at computers or chipping away at the coal face or driving or whatever it is we do. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and this human experience happens to be Western culture that's based on 9 to 5 or whatever your job requires of you. You tend to fall into that, and it's not natural. The natural thing is for us to be picking our own food and walking through the fields, hunting, whatever it is our bodies are genetically designed for. But we're not designed to sit at desks all day, so we need to fight the flab, but we also need to fight the flab up here, because this will do us in at the end of the day, because this imposes limits. This tells us things. It lies to us about who we think we are. We can't cope day to day. Monday to Friday wears us out, but coming the weekend we're exhausted, and that makes us feel like failures, because the next guy who's keeping up appearances and looks like he's got it mastered, we think he's doing all right, but he's struggling just as much as we are. It might be even more, but it's just not the done thing to talk about it. So I went and I talked about it. And I was just amazed at the response. And it just goes to show that there are other people out there as well who are struggling, who need someone to talk so that they feel safe to talk. So why don't we all just talk about it? Why don't we get together and just say, hang on a minute, I'm a bit worn out right now, I'm a bit frazzled, and I just need reminding that just turning up every day is a victory. And if I can do that, and if I can do a little bit more, and if I can engage in a practice which is going to make me feel better and be stronger and be more confident, then maybe there's more to life than just the 9 to 5. Maybe I can find something else that floats my boat, that gets me into those flow states. Maybe I could build something or start something or chase that dream I've had my whole life that I've put on the back burner for the last 20 years because I've needed to pay the bills. Maybe I can switch off the TV and have faith in myself that I can start something or build something or do something. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on kind of outing myself to the world. I'm not hiding anything now. Yes, I am a bit woo-woo and a bit of a spiritual junkie. Practical spirituality, I suppose you could call it, because we all need to look after ourselves and get ourselves unstuck. All right, so there you go. There's my thought for Monday. Have a lovely day, and don't feel ashamed to acknowledge that your self-talk, if you like, is getting you down. And also don't feel afraid to confront it and just say, you're not the boss of me. All that chatter going on in my head, I don't have to listen to you. I can just take a moment to pause, to breathe. I can go for a jog around the block. I can go for a walk in nature. I can read a book. Whatever it takes to just turn the volume down on the thing up here and take back control, or take back, the power and show it who's boss. All right, have a lovely day. Cheers.